Welcome to day 6 of our Yoga Sutras mini course. This is 7 lessons, and the 7th lesson tomorrow will be a review and pulling all together what we've learned so far. So today will be the last reading section. Hi, Leslie. Thanks for joining. So we are just getting started for day 6's lesson, and today is knowledge versus misconception. This is a continuation, so if you see in the PDF, I've still included the 7th verse, which we were studying yesterday. So this one goes along with that one definitely, but adds into it. So we'll be doing in these short little verses. Where we got? Hi, Sherry. And we'll have just some short little verses. So versus the other one was big long ones. These are really short ones that we'll put together. So this is 8, 9, 10, and 11. And so all together, this entire study is verse 1 through 11. And again, I mentioned the whole Yoga Sutras consist of about 200. So we are really skimming the ice, but I really think this gives you, oh, it's totally fine, Leslie. You will get all of it, despite if you haven't read all of the other ones or listened to all the other ones yet. So no problem. And because each verse stands alone, but when we put the big picture together, which we'll definitely do tomorrow, it allows us to start understanding it all. And it allows all those pieces to fit together like a puzzle piece. And I feel like the Yoga Sutras do that really well in how they're already organized, in everything stacks on the next one. And then once you've entertained all of them, going back and just picking ones or going back through the beginning. I've read this entire book from front to end at least 4 times, like really making it a mission to read it through. And every time I'm like, did I read that last time? Because our brain sees and picks up on what it needs at that moment. And so, and I'm sure you've experienced this if you've watched a movie or you've read any other book, or if you just replay maybe something that happened, if you videoed something that happened and you watched again a while later, you're like, wow, I totally forgot about that, or my brain just didn't recognize that. And we will get into that more in other studies in the future about how the mind selects. And this is part of law of attraction. This is part of manifestation and abundance. This is part of subconscious. This is part like how the brain works and how the mind works. And I do have a little series on the 11 rules of the mind, and that is one of those that's in there. So before we start diving deep into this, I also want to invite you to continue studying with me. If that feels like an option or something that you want to do, you can do that by being in this group and following it and making sure that you get the notifications. So when I do post or I come on live, that you'll see those. It at least gives you a reminder to go back and watch those videos. Or if you have an interest in continuing the yogic path of studying, I will be having I don't call it yoga school, but not in the sense of you have to become a yoga teacher in order to do it, or that's the means to the end. But to really have this huge path of exploration where you'll deepen your yogic path, and we will really dive into all of the Yoga Sutras and dive into all of the ethics and really the self-empowerment that comes about through learning yoga. And so we'll be doing that with the yoga school. If you're interested in that, I have what looks like a course on my course page for FigLeaf.Yoga.com. And it's just sign up, enroll to learn more. So as I get all of that enrollment information available, you'll just be one of the first to know. So just to let you know that before I forget. All right, so this one is knowledge versus misconception. And so in Yoga Sutra verse 8 of book 1, in the twilight you see a coiled rope and mistake it for a snake. You get frightened. There is no snake in reality. Therefore, this is false understanding, but still it created a terror in your mind. It is not valid knowledge that creates thought waves, but erroneous impressions also. So this is why in the last verse we really needed to clarify where truth comes from and where knowledge should be coming from truth. And this is why it's so important to go through the closet of the mind and sort out what is truth, because often we have these misconceptions in our mind, just like the man who went in his backyard and swore he saw a snake, and he yells for his neighbors to come and help him kill this snake, and they all come and they realize once they shine some light on it that it's just a coiled up rope. And that is our truth. Our truth is our flashlight. And we gain that flashlight by first turning it on. So we have to become aware in order to know that we have a flashlight to turn a light on. And when we turn the light on and we shine it, particularly in that spot, that allows us to say, is this truth? Is this something I believe? Yeah, sometimes we do this with funny little phrases that we have, and just questioning, like, what does that funny little phrase actually mean? And then we can do this with like these beliefs that we have around things, like the only way to get wealthy is through extremely hard work. And we should know that that's not true, because if that were true, we would see that everyone that works hard is wealthy. And that's not true. And then we would say, okay, well, everyone that has lots of money has to work really, really hard. And that's also not true. Therefore, the concept of you have to work really hard to earn good money is not true. But yet that's something our culture believes to be very true. And we can see that that thought was put in there as a mode to make us work hard, most likely as a child, right? Like we were told, well, you got to go to school, like you got to go to school and you got to work hard, because parents wanted their kids to work hard, and that was a motivation. Now, that's not to say that it's not entirely false, but it's also not entirely true. And so we really want to see what is a truth statement. Now, the key aspect in this particular verse is to say that just because it's not true doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on us, right? So if we see something and it appears to be true, the emotions still spring up on us. So even though that wasn't really a snake, the fright and the fear and the emotions that happened with inside of us were real. Those emotions were real. And so I want you to know that this happens so much to us, right? Like even if something bad happens and our mind says that's far worse than it actually is, well, it doesn't matter if it really is really bad or if it really isn't so bad. It's the fact of how we perceive it. And we should notice this not only for ourselves, but really when we look at other people too. How many times have we thought, I don't know why they're upset. That's not that big of a deal. Because in our frame of reference from our own story, if that were to happen to us, it might not spike those same emotions. But for them, based on their story and their life experience, that did spike a huge emotional trigger for them. And so that we should never judge somebody by the external circumstances, because we are all living in our own little worlds. We're all walking around and we're just bumping into each other, into our own little worlds. Yes, right, for our current environment. Very, very true. So right now, in case someone's watching this on a playback, with the COVID-19, so many people are perceiving this differently, right? Like some people are perceiving it as this extreme fear, and they are bringing in this excitement, and that is all fear is. Fear is just another form of excitement. And they are getting so stunned and shut down, and we can lower our immune system just by doing that alone, and yes, in fact, make ourselves sick. We can worry ourselves sick. That phrase is very true. um, and then for others like me, like when it first happened, I was like, this is awesome, we get to stay inside. So for the introverts versus the extroverts, which I am definitely both. I was an introvert most of my life and managed to get myself to become an extrovert. Um, Long story, a whole nother story in itself. But it's all dependent upon, everything is relative. Everything is relative, based on our own stories, based on others' stories, based on the circumstances. Nothing good is nothing bad. Everything is relative. And we read that one in one of the other ones. Okay. And for verse 9, you hear something, but really, it is nothing like that. At least there is a rope to be mistaken for a snake. There is nothing there, yet you still create an opinion about it. Full stop there. How many times has someone said something, and because you had something else on your mind, you took it completely wrong? And the person's left completely stunned by why you're upset. Because, again, it depends on where we are. Our mind journeys to so many places throughout the day. And in fact, our mind time travels all day. How many times throughout the day are you traveling to the future and you're traveling to the past, and you're creating like alternate universes within your mind, going to all these what if possibilities? Our mind is in so many places. And often we leave the end of the day and feel dispersed. We feel frazzled. And that frazzled feeling is because literally part of our mind is left all over the place. And so it's so important, if you want to sit and just meditate, just focus on recollecting yourself from all the worries, from all the future circumstances you've put yourself in, and all the past circumstances you've journeyed to, and all the possibilities, and just bring yourself back to your center and back to your oneness. So it's like an image arises on hearing mere words without any reality. And so our mind is really powerful. We can get images, and our images of our mind at some points can seem just as vivid as reality. And at other times, I find some people get frustrated because they want to see a vivid image in their mind. And the internal imagery of our mind isn't always the same, because again, we're not looking with physical eyes. We're looking with our internal eye, which is referred to as our third eye. And we're allowing ourselves to see. And a really strong meditation to practice is visioning a screen out in front of you, about 6 feet in front of you, and slightly 20 degrees above. And this is particularly documented in the Silva method. However, this has also been said by many people. When we lift our eyes to a certain degree, this is hypnosis, and we enter in these alpha waves, and it allows our mind to go into this place where we can daydream, where we can manifest, if that be your word. And on this screen, practice every day with one item. And maybe it's just an apple. And imagine yourself getting clearer and clearer and clearer. And you can develop your internal ability to create images. And in fact, a common one is to stare at something, close your eyes, and then see it and draw it inside of your mind. Or to envision yourself walking into your house and seeing every little detail inside of your mind. And again, this is that third eye, that center eye, our internal vision, which seems external, but it's internal. And if you enjoy reading, Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, he really taps into the pineal gland, and he goes into some chakra work and some energy work, and I highly suggest that book if you want to learn more about that as well. Okay, back to this verse 9. Suppose I say, John took his car to the garage, and on the way, all the tires got punctured. So he had to remove the wheels and give them to the mechanic to be repaired. He drove home very fast and got into an accident. And you say, oh, was it a terrible accident? You're only hearing my words. You haven't taken the time to think. If you thought about it, you would say, if he gave all four wheels to be repaired, he couldn't have drove it back. And therefore you would think this didn't happen. But maybe there was a piece of the story missing, or maybe, did we take the time to really put it all together to say, is a piece of the story missing, or did I just hear what I wanted to hear? So often we do not actively listen, and I love the quote, and I'm sure you've all heard it before. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. And this is a lesson I often give to many people I know, but to always ask permission before you give someone advice, to always allow yourself to paraphrase. And then sometimes it seems awkward for us, but it's so beautiful to give validation to someone and what they're saying. But it is also extremely beneficial because sometimes we do mishear. And there have been many times where we get upset and we're just like, what do you mean? I can't believe you said that. And we go on and on and on. And really, if we would stop and we would say, so what I think I heard, and you bring it back from your place, what I think I heard you say was that you need to go to the store and buy something. And they'll be like, yes. Or they could be like, no, that's not what I said at all. I'd be like, I am so sorry. That's what I thought I heard. And you will not believe how many arguments or frustrations on your own part, and just general frustrations for everyone, that we can avoid just by clarifying, because often we are not fully participating in active listening. And active listening means that we're listening with all of our body, that we're listening with our eyes, that we're listening with our body language, but we are also not thinking about our response. Because if you were listening in order to paraphrase back, you would not be listening to create a response, because often we're so ready to create that response that we're only halfway listening. We're only picking up on key words because our brain is beginning to multitask. And so it's just going, them, me, them, me, them, me. And so you're only getting part of the story, key pieces, which our brain can do, and it does it well, but it doesn't do it perfectly. Okay, and if you thought about it, let's see. Another example would be, his mother was a barren woman. It's a verbal delusion, but it can still create an impression in your mind. And so this kind of goes back to, again, when we were a child. People will tell us stuff, and these common phrases we hear, or these common beliefs that we might have within our culture, might not always make sense, but if we've heard it so many times, the mind learns by repetition. And so the mind says, well, if I've heard it this many times, it must be true. And that doesn't mean that it is true. And so it is so key for us to go back and shine those lights on our perceived snakes and see, is it really a snake or is it just a coiled up rope? All right, verse 10. And let me know at any point if you have any questions. Comment them down below. Even if you're watching this on replay, I can always come back and see questions, and then I can get those answered in follow-up videos or messaging back. Okay, this is the fourth type. Normally we say we do not have any thought in the mind during sleep, but we actually have the thought of having no thought. That is why when we wake up and we can say, I slept very well, but I didn't know anything, or I didn't dream. And sometimes we even wake up and we're going, I know I had a dream, but I can't remember what it was. I don't know if that's you. You knew nothing, but you know that you knew nothing. Don't think that there was no thought in sleep. And I do this sometimes even driving. I'm driving and I'm just kind of staring blankly. And anytime that you stare blankly, anytime that you've lost perception of being in the present moment, how many of us have gone on autopilot and we're like, I remember nothing. I started driving and I got to my destination. I don't remember thinking. I don't remember thinking. Time just went whoosh, like I went through a little time portal. And you were thinking. You just don't remember what you were thinking about. So the thought of not thinking is thinking, and implies that you were thinking. And that's why it's so key for us to know, where does our mind go? And the more and more that we can practice meditation and noticing our thoughts within the sitting, and I say meditation is kind of like our mental gym. So it's building up our mental muscle of awareness, just as we would go to the gym and build up our biceps or legs. If there were no thought and you were completely unconscious, you would not even feel that you had slept. All other thoughts are temporarily suspended except for this one thought of the emptiness in mind. And so he's just further proving a point, and I think it was kind of a little bit in retaliation of some yogis and like Zen meditation that says you must empty the mind. And he's just saying you can never empty the mind. So for all of those who think I can't empty the mind, therefore I can't meditate, he's trying to really hit home a point here that says everyone can meditate. Everyone thinks at all times. And if anything, even the thought of becoming aware that you're not thinking is still a thought. So no worries. If the mind is going, that's beautiful, especially if you can notice it. All right, last one. Verse 11, memories. Memories create impressions in the mind and at a later time come to the surface, either when we want them or sometimes even when we don't want them, right? Yes, yeah, that driving, yeah, that really, I think, is a key awakener for a lot of people when we realize we're going on autopilot a lot. So memories, they come up. Sometimes memories hit us out of the blue. And I do corrective alignment therapy, which I do some like manual manipulation. And even in yoga classes and one-on-one yoga sessions, this happens where we will start moving through certain body parts and suddenly people will start remembering. They're like, I just remembered. And they're like, I haven't remembered that in forever. I totally didn't even know I had that memory. And I love that when that happens, especially when we're getting around the heart center. I hear beautiful things about people's parents and siblings, and sometimes we can hear really lovely stories. And then often, sometimes it comes back as tears, and they're releasing. And that is one of the beauties of yoga and working with this external layer, the physical body, because we can release things within yoga. We can be doing a posture and we get really discomfort and we just want to come out of the posture so badly. And I've even done this myself where I've gotten really angry and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to be in this posture right now. This is horrible. I want out of it. And there was no pain. It was just this irritability came about suddenly. And then memories start coming and emotions start coming. And sometimes the memories don't come, sometimes it's just the emotions, and it's this release where the issues are in the tissues. Our memories get stuck into our body parts. And I did a little thing with what was it, an Instagram live chat today, and we were speaking about how if we don't allow ourselves to weep, grieve, whatever it might be, that sorrow, that weeping will go to organs and into those tissues. And one of my friends was saying that she had a miscarriage and she had grieved. And when she was working with our other friend, who's a craniosacral therapist, she got to the uterus and suddenly she had all this sorrow that came back up. And it was that organ, that tissue was still holding on to the grieving process, and it needed to let go. And beautiful. She's a beautiful doula. If you need her contact information for you or anyone else, I would be happy to give it to you. I have a lot of friends that are doulas, which I love, and I do teach prenatal yoga as well, which is why we were having the conversation today. But these memories are deep in our subconscious, and as a hypnotherapist, I see this a lot, and I have regressed people back to a feeling that they had in the first time they felt it, and we've gone back to being in the womb. We've gone back to their first day or two of life, and they weep and they weep, and the feeling is so real for them. And when they come out of hypnosis, they're like, I had no idea I had that memory. I have no idea where that came from. And it's so beautiful because it happens over and over and over. It's not just one person. We have all of those memories stored within our mind. It's just not in our accessible memory from our conscious mind. So our conscious mind typically is functioning from the prefrontal cortex, which isn't fully developed until we're 25. So that's why I tell my kids they're not allowed to get married until after they're 25. All the rational decisions. Okay. So memories can come in two ways. They can come in dreams that come to the surface while we sleep, and those manifest in many different ways. And daydreams are memories that arise during the day. Both are impressions which formed slowly descend to the bottom of the mind and then come up to the surface when they're rekindled for some reason. And so these are the 5 kinds of thought forms that we have now gone over that must be controlled to make the mind void and to allow the inner peace to shine through. Knowing this is our next question. How can we control all of these inner workings of the mind? How can we control the memories? How can we control the misconceptions? How can we control knowing what is truth? It's easy to say control the mind, but in reality, the mind seems to be controlling us. And so that is the purpose of further studying the Yoga Sutras, is to learn how do we get control over all of these misconceptions. And although I've given you many hints along the ways and many clues and tips, studying these Yoga Sutras further and further dives into more meditation techniques and more mind sorting and memory sorting and learning how to gain control over all of this and beginning that deep study of the yogic path, which, as I've mentioned earlier on, that this is classical yoga, or also referred to as Raja Yoga. And the main focus of Raja Yoga is getting ourselves to meditation. Of course, we do practice asana, but that is not the most important part. It is integral into our practice. But this is also where restorative yoga comes more into play, and this more releasing yoga. And as I teach classical yoga, I like to blend all of those paths together So we get into the meditation and the knowledge-based, which can be more of that jhana yoga. And then karma yoga and bhakti, which is devotion yoga. And so maybe we choose to devote ourselves to bettering mankind, or you can devote yourself to your source or creator. And so we can choose all of these each individually. And then there, of course, there is the hatha yoga practice, which is more of how do we align our posture and our breath. And I am also a huge fan of Kundalini yoga. I have done a couple Kundalini trainings and awakening and Tantra yoga. And so I really try to pull together as much of those as possible. I feel like, again, the truth lies within everything. And so we can find truth in all of them, but just expressed in different ways. And some truths, again, that vehicle and how it's expressed will resonate more with some people than other people. And so as we find and we discover our yogic path, whether it's with me or with someone else, I'm totally fine either way, know that there are many different vehicles of yoga. So you may say, oh yes, Kundalini yoga is what I love. I want to go study Kundalini yoga. Maybe it's the hatha yoga and the strict asana practices, such as Iyengar or something of that sort. By all means, if those are what speak to you, or the Ashtanga, which there are two different ways to refer to Ashtanga, the Eightfold Path, or Ashtanga, like the more rigorous style of yoga. All of these, none of them are the only way. They're all extremely valid in their own ways. They're all the truth, but they're just in a different form so that they can speak to each different type of person. And if you are the person that wants to take more of this meditative path and this more trauma healing and restorative, and not saying that we don't do anything not restorative, we definitely do, but it's more of this corrective alignment approach of really noticing how we're out of line mentally, physically, energetically. And we do energetic studies and the subtle body, and getting some little into the esoteric field a little bit, but not too far-fetched, because I always am rooted in science. So if that sounds anything you're interested in, please stay in touch if you would like to study further. I do have breath and body meditation available for replays as a free little mini course just like this one. And if you haven't signed up, go check that out at FigLeaf.Yoga.com. And there will be lectures and courses popping up more and more, so stay tuned. I have things on personal development, not only specific to the yogic path, because again, this is truth. So I also have my MBA, and so I focus it too on our business mentality and just our job performance, and how can we bring these practices into each one of our worlds, such as our own individual practices, our family practices, our work practice, and how we can bring all of that peace and oneness into all of that. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight. And tomorrow will be our summary of what we've been learning. So we will have verses 1 through 11 summary for tomorrow on our day 7. Bye. Thank you. Thank you for joining.